welcome to another episode of Amanda Homestead. My name is Amanda, and today what we're going to be talking about is something that I think is on everybody's minds with the inflation the way it is how to stretch your food dollar, okay? So I have another video that I talked about kind of how to stretch your food dollar using a whole chicken. So I'm going to post a link there if you want to check that out. Okay. So today what we're going to be talking about is how to use a cut of pork called a pork shoulder. All right, let me lift up this pork shoulder without dripping all over the place. Okay, here is the pork shoulder. And this is, as you know, it's sometimes called a picnic roast or a Boston butt. I'm not sure why it's called those things because it comes from the shoulder. It's an inexpensive cut of meat because the shoulder is a very active joint. It's always moving, and so this is a bit tough, which means that you're going to want to cook this slowly. All right, so you can do a few things with this. You can make it into a roast in a slow cooker or a pressure cooker and just serve it that way. But I want to stretch it a little bit more than that because meat's expensive. And so what we're going to do with this pork roast today is we're going to turn it into some pulled pork, which then you can use to make lots of different stuff. And then with the leftover liquid from cooking it, I'm then going to use that as a base for a soup, which I do a lot of times when I'm kind of doing something. I'll then use what's left over to make a soup, and you just stretch it farther than that. All right. So the first thing I'm going to do with this is I'm actually going to, because I'm going to use my pressure cooker, or similarly like the Instapot idea. I'm going to cut these into large size pieces, probably about 2 or 3 inch square. There's a bone in here, so you'll kind of have to cut around that. But you can leave the bone in because the bone actually has some nice bone marrow here, right there, and that'll add a lot more flavor to both your pulled pork, but also to your soup especially. All right, so what I'm going to season it with is some salt to start with, and then I'm going to use some 5 spice powder, some Chinese 5 spice powder, because I'm making an Asian recipe, and that I find works really, really well for that. Kind of that 5 spice powder gives it a really nice kind of warm kind of flavor. Then I've got my spice powder there. And I'm just gonna sprinkle that over top. Ooh. And again, you can see I'm not really measuring. That's kind of how I cook. And then I'm going to transfer it to a bowl. So you can put this into the fridge if you're going to be marinating it for more than an hour or two. If you're only marinating it for about an hour, you can kind of leave it on the top of your countertop, right? Okay, so now our pork has been seasoning long enough, and I'll show you kind of the other ingredients that we're going to use. So we're going to use 1 small onion. I'm going to have like a knob of ginger here, about an inch or so. 2, these are giant, so there's probably about 3 cloves of garlic for the average person, but these are kind of huge. And then soy sauce. My husband is allergic to soy, so we are going to be using a soy-free substitute, okay? Honey, also very, very good from our hives. And then some chicken stock, some chicken broth, okay? So first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our onion, and I'm just going to kind of roughly chop it. Just like that. Same thing with the garlic, because I'm going to put all this into a food processor. I have to tell you, my food processor is like my favorite thing. If you're going to invest in any kind of kitchen gadget and you like to cook, you should try a food processor. Put all of that in there. Okay, and then I'm just going to pulse it. I've got some rendered lard here, some pork lard, actually from a pig that we bought from a farmer. You could use oil. Any kind of high temperature cooking oil would be fine too. All right. As I said, I kind of just eyeball this. Well, you guys are gonna hate my recipes because I eyeball a lot of stuff. Okay, so I'm putting probably maybe about 2 tablespoons worth of oil or lard in there. And then as it's beginning to melt, then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually put our mixture of onion, garlic, and ginger in there. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm just gonna kind of saute this until the onion is translucent. So probably just about 3 minutes worth. Okay, now we're gonna add our pork in. That's our pork that's been sitting with the spice powder and the salt. I'm just gonna mix that up. So I'm gonna put a 1/4 cup of that soy sauce or soy sauce alternative in there. I'm gonna put the same amount of honey, a 1/4 cup, and I'm gonna put a teaspoon of my chicken stock powder, and that's gonna end up being 1 cup of stock. So I then add 1 cup of water. And that's it. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna seal this up and put it on the high pressure setting to cook for an hour. So here is our beautiful finished pulled pork, which you can use kind of for whatever you want. You could put this over rice. You could serve it on a bun. What we are going to do is we're going to make it into those rice paper wraps. So I've got a few things to go with it. I've got some shredded carrots and some lettuce. I have also got some, these are really hard to see, but what they are is they're actually noodles, kind of mung bean noodles. You could just use rice vermicelli. And then over here by my tripod is the bean sprouts we made earlier in the week. I have some cilantro and also some mint. Okay, so let me show you. These are the rice paper wraps. They come in a disc-like package like this, okay? And then what you do is you take an individual one, and I've got some warm water here, and we just put it in here for 15 seconds. Gotta move it around. Just like that, and then you pull it out, and then you're ready to assemble. All right, so now we are going to assemble it. So first I'm gonna start with some of the pork. All right, as you can see, I don't put too much on there. Okay, and so you're going to kind of want to put it into a little bit of a rectangle here right in the middle. So you've got some space at the top and at the bottom because that's where you're going to fold it. And then I'm going to put some of that grated carrot. I'm going to put some bean sprouts. Okay, and then I'm going to put some of the lettuce on here. Maybe a little bit of that cilantro. Okay, perfect. All right, so I'm going to kind of make it look pretty. That's about how much you'll want to put on. And then you're going to kind of fold it like a burrito. Fold up from the bottom, fold up from the top, and then we kind of tuck it over here, and then you're going to kind of tuck it in with your fingers, okay, pushing it in, not too much or you'll rip it, and then you roll it like so. Keep kind of tucking as you roll, okay? And there you have it. So then at that point, you can kind of eat it like that, or make it look professional, and then you cut it, okay? All right, and then I've just got a sweet chili Thai sauce here, and you just whoops, dip and munch. Excellent. Okay, so here we are, it's day 2, and we're going to show you kind of what we're going to use to turn the leftover pork shoulder into a soup. I think that there's a little bit less pork shoulder than I anticipated. Maybe somebody was snacking. I can't say for sure, I'm not going to say anything. Anyway, so what we're going to do, you can see there's the pork shoulder there, and then the kind of other ingredients that I'm anticipating using, which is I've got some sliced up carrots. I've got some sauerkraut that we made earlier in the season. I'm going to soak that in water just to make it a little bit less acidic, but that's a great way to kind of add some other vegetables there. We also have some of those bean sprouts that we made. And then as far as kind of, I'm going to put in also some ramen noodles just to kind of fill it up a little bit. And then I'm going to put in, as far as seasonings go. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add the pork and the kind of juice that we have left over. Turn that around so you can actually see this. Okay. Okay. Then I'm going to add 4 cups of water, and then I'm going to just see how much it is. I'm going to probably add about 4 more cups because this is going to be a lot of noodles and vegetables. Yep, I think that's about right. Okay, so because I put in 8 cups of water, about enough for 6 cups of stock, and that way I can just taste it and see whether or not it needs more salt. I just don't want it to be too salty. So that's going to be, for me, it's going to be 2 tablespoons worth of this powder. All right, then we're going to turn the heat on and bring it to a boil. All right, so we're coming to a boil now. I'm going to turn it down to about medium-high, and I'm going to just start by adding the things that are going to take the longest to cook. So for me, that's going to be the carrots. So I'm going to put them in first. And then we'll wait for that to come back to a boil before we add the next ingredient, which is going to be the ramen noodles. And while that's kind of coming to the boil, I'm just going to kind of taste the broth. I did that a little bit already. And I'm going to add, and again, this is going to be kind of up to you, right? So I'm going to add a little bit of sesame oil just because I like that kind of nutty flavor. And as you notice, I do not measure. So I'm going to add a little bit more of that 5 spice powder just because, again, I like the flavor of it. I'm going to probably add about maybe a teaspoon, I think. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of this sambal olek, which is a fresh chili paste. Just a little bit though. I would take more of it, but my familia, not so much. All right. So that's probably all I'm going to do for now until I get all the vegetables in there and everything, and then I'll taste it again and see what else I want to put in there. I kind of want to wait until the very end to decide if I want to put in extra soy sauce because I don't like my soup to be too salty. Okay, so we're back up boiling again. Now I'm going to add my ramen noodles. And I cut my carrots really thin here, so I didn't really cook them a lot extra. Because the ramen noodle is going to take about only 2 minutes to boil before they're cooked. And these are really thin carrots, so they won't take very long either. If you had cut your carrots a little bit thicker, you could definitely cook them a little bit longer before you put those ramen noodles in there. Okay, and I've kind of got like a little pinch of them. That's how much, because it's not very much soup. Then I'm going to break them in half, and then I'm going to pop them in there. And it's at a pretty vigorous boil now. I'll just make sure it's going to stay that way once I add the noodles in. And I don't want it boiling too hard. I'm going to turn it down a little bit. I'm going to let it cook for 2 minutes. And then we're going to add the rest of the ingredients. Because the sauerkraut and the bean sprouts that are left, they really don't need to cook. They just need to be hot. Now I'm going to add my sauerkraut. As well as my bean sprouts. We'll stir that in. You can kind of see that I've made this big giant pot of soup from very, very little meat. And that's kind of the idea. You're going to have all the good flavors of that pork in there without a crazy volume of meat, and that's what makes this so affordable. All right, we'll bring it back up to the boil, and then we'll start tasting the soup and seeing what we think it needs. I'm just going to kind of dip my spoon in here. Pretty good, actually. Maybe, I think it's salty enough, so I'm actually not going to put any soy sauce in there. Maybe I'm going to put a little bit of vinegar in just to give it a little bit of acidity. All right, let's try that. Always trying to balance the flavors. I do cook from recipes as well, but when I'm doing something like this, I just kind of decide what I feel like doing and seeing what I have in the house, right? And that's really important. When you're making a soup, you can just kind of throw in whatever you have. Yeah, that's good. All right, here's the last thing, just a little bit of cilantro. Growing your own herbs, whether that's inside or outside, is another great way to save money because herbs are so expensive. Fresh ones, it's ridiculous. So this is just going to kind of wilt, so they'll look a lot smaller. And then our soup is done. All right, we'll just ladle a good amount of noodles in there. And some of the broth over top. And there you have it. So thank you for joining me again on another episode of I Demand a Homestead. If you like this video, please feel free to subscribe, and also don't forget to press the notification bell so that way you always know when I put out another video. And I hope you enjoyed kind of seeing how we stretch our food dollar so that way we're able to buy meat that is ethically raised and have a relationship with our local farmers. Costs a little bit more, but we think it's definitely worth it. So I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.